Hi, welcome to Ashbrook Live. We're talking today with the great stand-up comedian, comic, Jimmy Tingle. He's been out in the world and making people laugh for a long time now. You've seen him on HBO, CNN. 60 Minutes was his domain for a while. He's got a new comedy special out. 5 more nights it's running. Humor for Humanity 2020 with Jimmy Tingle. Jimmy Tingle is a comedian who's got humanity at the heart of his heart, and he shares it in the most uproarious way, and we're really delighted to have him with us today. I'm going to bring him right in. Jimmy Tingle, we're going to admit right now, come on in. It's great to have you here. The great Jimmy Tingle. Jimmy, are you there? Jimmy, hey, can you, my friend? Now, let me get these in. It's always one thing or another. Hi. Jimmy, can you hear it? Have you got it? You're on, baby. There, no, I got you. You're there. Hi.
I don't have headphones. Do I need them?
No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
We're on. You're here.
I can't hear you.
Oh, well, turn up your computer volume.
There you go. Okay, well, here we go.
You got it?
Yeah, man.
It's like linking the space shuttle and the orbiting thing every time, you know?
I know. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here, Jimmy, and I'm so happy you've got your big new special out. I watched it last night. It's just terrific. 5 more nights. People go to jimmytingle.com and get right in there. A bunch of the proceeds go to all kinds of good works around that you're supporting, and good on you for doing it. It must be weird. You filmed this, the heart of this, you filmed back in February, and you brought it up to date in the most wonderful way. But what a time between February and now, Jimmy.
Yes, we filmed it February 29th at the Sanders Theater, and not knowing we were going into lockdown, and then we were in lockdown for, as you know, in the last 9 months, we're still there. And over the course of that time, just try to hone it and bring it up to date to the extent possible. And we ended up with about almost an hour special. And it's not just a stage performance, as you saw. There's some interviews, etc., in there, and putting the bits in perspective. So it was a lot of fun doing it.
No, I thought it was just fantastic, and it's surprising, but maybe not. Maybe good comedy, that's the way it works. How much from February stands right up now at the end of 2020 after everything that's happened this year? You were feeling the right vibes at the beginning of the year, Jimmy. It works really well.
Yeah, well, thank you, Tom. We tried to make it just more evergreen than specific. This happened today and this happened yesterday. It's not that type of a show. It's more of what motivated me to run for office initially, and why would a comic want to run for office, and then how to and what themes are still consistent that have been with us this whole year, but also, as you see in the film, going back in my comedy career 20, 30 years, a lot of the same themes are still there.
Let's go straight to the running for office. This was for the 2020 campaign, and for Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts?
It was 2018, yeah.
Excuse me, 2018, of course. And you were there in the primary. The primary means a lot in Massachusetts.
Yes.
You got a lot of votes. You didn't get the position in the end, but what took you out of comedy is all the way in there, Jimmy?
Well, first of all, let me just say, we got 200, first time running for public office, first time running, we got 213,313 votes. First time running,
Who's counting?
First time running, came in second place. That's
pretty great.
The bad news, 2-person race.
Yes.
But I have to say, one of the great things about running, my opponent was Quentin Palfrey, and he's just a wonderful man, and we got along really well. And it is proof to me that you can work in politics and respect even your opponent in a race and still admire, just respect people, even if you're, running against them. And at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, not only Democrats, but Democrats and Republicans are on the same team, trying to achieve hopefully the same goals nationally. So what motivated me initially running was after the 2016 election, I saw Donald Trump, and I saw as an entertainer how he was able to communicate with people for a message that was not my message, but it was resonating with his followers. And I was thinking, well, if he can use his communication skills as an entertainer for his message, I could at least try to use my communication skills for our message. And he had short, simple messages. He had short, simple phrasing: build the wall, drain the swamp. 3 words: build the wall, drain the swamp. Lock her up. Make America great. You know something? On our side, we have our own 3 words. Feed the hungry. Feed the hungry. Not only the people who are hungry for food, the people who are hungry for opportunity. House the homeless. Not only the people who walk on the streets every night in our cities and states and all over the country, but also the people who work every day and are trying to find a safe, affordable place to live and raise a family. House those homeless and heal the sick, not only physical illness, but mental illness and substance abuse, and welcome the stranger. Welcome the stranger. So America and Massachusetts continue to welcome people into this great country rather than pushing people out. This was the message, my message. This was the message of our party. Feed the hungry, house the homeless, heal the sick, welcome the stranger. And I would add, Tom, fix the tea.
Fix mass transit. God, those are in trouble all over the country right now. Listeners, viewers, if you're on with us, your questions for Jimmy Tingle are very welcome right now. Here's Michael who says, I voted for Jimmy as lieutenant governor. So you got near constituents with us right now, Jimmy. Your questions, your comments for Jimmy Tingle, very welcome as we talk with him today. Jimmy Tingle joins us from Cambridge. His show, Humor for Humanity, 2020 running 5 more nights. Jimmy, you've got such a bright spirit, and I love that about you. You know, I sometimes get driven by fear about what I see out there. And sometimes I've been driven pretty hard by that. I drove myself right out of NPR in part with that just sense of, oh my God, we got to get on top of this. Yeah. And sometimes it's too much for people, but you've got this bright spirit. When you say, here we are at the end of 2020, after everything we've seen, and even right now, and you know this, you've got Republicans who next week on January 6th, when they're supposed to sign off on the people's vote for the presidency, are planning to object to it. You know, you've got just today, Josh Hawley, senator out of Missouri, saying he's going to object when we go to the floor, we go to Congress, when Mike Pence is supposed to just open the result and basically sign off on it. They're going to object. You say Democrats and Republicans, we're all on the same team. Are we, Jimmy? Are we really?
I think in the big picture we are. Let's see how it unfolds. My whole point about the optimism is, as a country, we've been through very difficult times before, and we will continue to be in difficult times, but we will get through it. I mean, we got through the Civil War, and we had to have a war. I mean, we got through the Civil Rights Movement. Every generation is challenged with different challenges. There was the Great Recession, the Depression, the Civil Rights Movement, the Civil War, all of these things. People rallied, and we ultimately make progress at the end of the day. And I think we will make progress at the end of the day. I'm optimistic about Biden. I'm optimistic because he's been there for a long time. He knows the players on both sides. I think if anybody could work with the other side of the aisle, it would be Joe Biden. That is my hope. I think that's the goal for the Democrats, and I hope that's the goal for the Republicans as well. Yes, there's the Josh Hawleys. Yes, there are the people that don't want to compromise. Their base doesn't want to compromise, but I do think that I'm hopeful that Biden and the level-headed people on the other side and the level-headed people on the Democratic side will be able to come to consensus. I saw him in an interview the other day, and it was very telling. He was asked, why do you think there'll be more stimulus, and why do you think there'll be more money for vaccines moving forward with this division? And he said, because the people in those districts, those congressional districts, and in those states, in the red states, are going to demand it. They're going to say, where's our vaccine? You know, where is our relief package? And they're going to put pressure, and according to Joe Biden, they're going to put pressure on their elected officials for the things that we need as a country to move forward. So in that respect, I am optimistic.
I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe Joe's right. But what posture would you recommend for him coming in there? Should he? Can you really make nice with Mitch McConnell? You saw them freeze Barack Obama for 8 years. They would not back much of anything that he wanted to do. Anytime they had the power to stop him. Mitch McConnell, we don't know. It all depends on Georgia next week, but he may have that power again.
He may.
What posture, what attitude would you take if you're Joe Biden right now? Crack the whip, extend the hand. Is it really going to work with this GOP?
I think extending the hand, first of all, and it does depend on Georgia, of course, but it's also, what are the people in Kentucky, in Mitch McConnell's Kentucky, what do they need? Because that's what it's about. What do those people need? Mitch McConnell's relationship with newly elected Barack Obama is a much different relationship than with Joe Biden, who has been there for decades in the Senate. And they have worked on, and according to Mitch McConnell and according to Joe Biden, they have worked on big things before in the past. So I think there's a track record there of working together. And Joe Biden has that relationship with all these other senators on the other side, just about. And so I think that is to our advantage and his advantage and the country's advantage. One of the things I made, one of the issues that I made in a point in the paper that I did the other day with the Globe is around recovery and substance abuse issues.
Yeah, I saw that.
How that can be a unifying rallying point for both the Democrats and the Republicans to create a concerted effort, a national, federal, concerted effort around recovery and treatment centers around the country, because there are millions of people in all the red states and all the blue states who need and want help.
And
now,
you talk about that from firsthand experience. Your comedy career really took off after you hit bottom.
Yeah.
And substance abuse was part of that hitting bottom.
Right. And of course, the virus is first. I mean, that's the first national health emergency. But I would say second is the recovery, the substance abuse and alcoholism that is pretty widespread in the country, and because of the virus is getting worse. And I think that that is a place of mutual agreement. It's going to help both sides. Every congressional district will benefit because every congressional district is affected. It has hurt Republican presidential families. I mean, Donald Trump's older brother, Fred, obviously Betty Ford, members of the Bush family, members of the Kennedy family, Jimmy Carter's brother, all of these people had
Hunter Biden,
exactly, Hunter Biden. And that was my point in the article, that if Joe Biden was saying my son Hunter, as he did in the debate, had a problem with addiction, and everybody can, I mean, most people can identify with that, and somebody in their family, friends, or relationship have had that problem. And I think if we make this effort that we got to get together and we have to solve these problems that are front and center, that are killing our family members, our friends, our co-workers, our relatives, our political allies, and our political adversaries. I mean, that's the type of attitude I think Joe Biden can and will have.
Jimmy, I want to get on that train with you and with Joe Biden. I don't know how we go forward if we don't pull the country together. But look right now what's happening. I mean, the president himself, it may be cynical, maybe not, but he said, let's have a $2,000 for Americans who haven't had, millions and millions have had nothing for months now except disease and job loss, millions. And you've got Mitch McConnell saying, no, not going to happen, making it impossible for that to happen. I mean, if they're not down with helping Americans in the heart of a crisis like this right now, what makes you think they'll be down with it 6 months from now?
I don't know. Maybe they will change their mind.
Yeah.
I mean, we still have some time before that's definite, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they will change their mind. Maybe if they get a groundswell of support from the people in those states, in Kentucky and in Georgia, and I know that's one of the pressure points the Democrats are trying to apply in Georgia, that, this is, you will vote Democrat, it's worth $2,000 to you. That can be a big incentive.
Jimmy, you watched Donald Trump when he was running for the presidency, and those simple phrases that he used as an entertainer. And it's interesting to hear you say that. So you saw him as one entertainer watching essentially another. I mean, not just his work on The Apprentice, but in some ways his whole business is about pizzazz. When you look under the hood, there's not a whole lot there, but he's done relatively well with that. What about his presidency itself? Where has having an entertainer president like Donald Trump for 4 years taken this country in terms of what we expect from our leaders?
Well, it depends on the entertainer. Ronald Reagan was an entertainer. Well, he also had experience in government. Arnold Schwarzenegger was an entertainer. He also had experience in government. Donald Trump was able to communicate. He was able to rally his base. He was able to get 70 million people to vote for him. And what you have to do is deliver. If you're going to say what he says, then you have to deliver. And on certain things he did deliver. And certain things he did deliver that made his base very happy. He delivered on the judges. He delivered on he said he was going to cut environmental regulations. He did. These are not my proposal, but these are his. I'm going to cut environmental. He said he was going to get out of the climate change agreement, Paris climate change. He did. He got out of the Iran nuclear deal. He did. Now, I personally support all of those things, but he said what he was going to do, and then he did it. And I think that resonated with his base. He got a huge percentage of the Republican Party to stay with him. I think 85%. Now, a lot of them did not. A lot of them obviously did not. The Lincoln Project was appalled by Trump. They felt like he was compromised by the Russians. They felt like he had all these shady business deals in the past, but they're very sophisticated. Those folks are very sophisticated voters and operatives. But the average person in Ohio or wherever, where he comes in and says, we're going to build a factory here. There used to be a factory here. There's not one now. I'm going to bring it back. That resonates with people. So that ability to communicate with people is very, very effective. You have to deliver on it, though. And in some cases he did, in some cases he didn't.
A bunch of those factories never showed up. Meanwhile, this was a president pumping out lie after lie after lie. And now you've got people who believe those lies, whether they're true or not. I mean, reading this morning, people talking about Donald Trump building a fascistic cult in the USA. Mm-hmm. Does that kind of concern grab you, or do you still think of the GOP as, it's a two-party state, we trade back and forth, everything's going to be fine here?
No, of course it grabs me. It definitely does. I think the way we have to, it seems to me, is we have to deliver to that base as well. And we have to deliver to that base in terms of, okay, what is our government going to do? What are we going to do in terms of healthcare? Are we going to have vaccines for these areas of the country who are in denial? Yesterday, a congressman from Louisiana, newly elected congressman, 41 years old, died of COVID-19.
Two little kids,
wake up calls.
Awful.
Herman Cain, is at a Trump rally, no mask, dies of. So we have to make the case the same way. And I think it's going to have to resonate tragically with the disease and deaths of thousands of people, the way it's unfolding around the country. Many of these places voted for the current president and Donald Trump. And I think if we can deliver to these folks and to these areas of the country, vaccines, hope, hospitalization if needed, healthcare coming out of this virus, again, going back to treatment centers, substance abuse, education, if we can improve the quality of lives, of people's lives in those districts, that's what we have to deliver. And just like FDR did, after the Depression, he delivered for the poorest people in the country to the extent possible. And I think that's where we're at now. We have to deliver. We have to show that government matters and the government can work.
How do you pull people back from la la land? You've got a whole lot of people now, among that 75 million that voted for Trump, who are believing all kinds of really dangerous lies about what happened in this election. I mean, we're not to January 20th, we're not to inauguration. But you got people really believing, look at the polls, huge percentages of Republicans believing blatant lies that Trump is laying out. It's as if they don't really require people to deliver. Just tell me a story that makes me feel comfortable or angry in a way that I kind of savor. How do you get people off of that? That's a kind of addiction in itself, isn't it?
Well, I think it might be. People want to believe. What is it? Bias, confirmation bias.
Yeah, confirmation bias. The stuff they want to believe, they're ready to believe.
Right. It doesn't make it true, though. It doesn't make it true that Donald Trump won the election just because they believe it. It doesn't make it true that the virus was a conspiracy or that it's a hoax just because they want to believe it. It doesn't make it true that climate change is not real just because they want to believe it. So I think we just got to keep our head down and keep going forward based on facts, based on science, based on medical research. And we just got to keep going forward. And this is the challenge before us. Not only do we have the scientific challenges and the challenges of climate change and the vaccine and all of that and delivering it to people, but then we have the overcome as you said, the people who are believing misleading information. And we have to counter the other argument. I mean, one thing about Donald Trump that was really frustrating, and I think this is hopefully where maybe some reform will take place in this country, just about the level of disinformation that's on the public airwaves, that the level of disinformation that's on the web. Why can't we have standards? I mean, I used to work, you worked at NPR. There were standards. Tom Ashbrook couldn't go out there and make up his own facts and put them on NPR. I worked at 60 Minutes too. There were standards. There were journalistic standards. Here's the thing though, Tom, they weren't laws. There were standards. There were standards. There were journalistic ethics. There were ethical norms, but they weren't laws. And what we need, unfortunately, was Trump has shown us that we need some sort of enforcement policy where if you say something that's incorrect or deliberately, I don't mean making a mistake, I mean deliberately perpetrating disinformation, what's wrong with fines? What's wrong with fines? It's a form of advertising. I mean, Volkswagen was fined, Volkswagen, Kellogg's was fined by the Federal Trade Commission for false advertising about the amount of fructose in cereal. And, commercial entities are fined all the time for false advertising. If you're making political statements on national television or on network television or on cable television or on radio with the public, where you need a license to broadcast with the FCC, I think there should be some sort of consequences for repeated disinformation because you're hurting the public.
But what happens in the period we're in now, where all those things that need a license to broadcast make up only a slice of what's going on in terms of public communication? Social media outweighs those by multiples at this point. And, on social media, you can say almost anything, and the companies who own those platforms, Facebook, Twitter, right on down, they cannot be held accountable. This has been right in the, you come right to the thick of what Trump's been talking about lately, this Section 230, which he wanted repealed, right? And this is from the 90s. When everybody was optimistic about the internet, and it says the companies who own these platforms, they're not publishers. They can't be held accountable like a newspaper publisher or a TV station owner. That whatever goes, they're just offering a platform and people can say whatever they want, and there's no accountability for that. You want to rein that in? Because if you do, Donald Trump will be in there and guys like him will be in there suing anybody on social media who says something they don't like about them.
Well, if it's factually true, then if they're saying something that's factually incorrect about Donald Trump, that's one thing. But if they're not, that's another thing. And if the people who are making a boatload of money off the disinformation on their platforms, they have a responsibility to the overall society. So if we have to change those rules, that's what we have to do, because it's ultimately going to benefit everybody. And right now it's a loophole. And Trump and that whole crew, they've driven a bus through the loophole, that media loophole of there's no consequences for false political speech and no consequences for other speech that is false, even if it's on social media. So with social media's reach, I think it's got to change. It's still relatively early. I mean, it's not now, but I mean, in the course of, compared to television and radio that came out in the 30s and 40s, they had strict controls out of the box with those folks. And I think we need to implement some controls when it comes to social media and these companies, because it's clearly, it's out of control, as you said.
It's a Wild West out there. There's conspiracies of such magnitude believed so widely. It takes me back to the conversation about dependency. I feel like Americans are hooked on this stuff. We bemoan polarization. We bemoan the divided country. But look at how many people are you've seen people are just tied like a ball and chain to social media. They can't get off of it. They want more and more. They're kind of salivating over all the fights and all the wicked stuff and all the wicked humor. But if you try and take that away from Americans, it seems to me like it's almost like trying to take the needle away from somebody who's on it.
Well, you don't have to take the whole thing away from them. Just, you got to regulate it. That's all. Why not have a license to get on Facebook? Why not have a learner's permit to get on these platforms? You guys, some sort of just like when you're driving, you need a learner's permit before you get on the highway, right? Why not a learner's permit before you get on the internet information highway with certain rules? You like the 10 Commandments: you will not lie, you will not steal, you will not cheat, you will not discredit your neighbor. I mean, I'm being a little facetious here, but I think, Tom, one of the things you're talking about, people obsessed about the media and how despondent you can become. One of the things that I do is I detached from it. I did not completely. I pay attention. I try to keep up what's going on in the world, but I've detached in a big way and try to self-care as individuals, healthy, eating well, exercise, trying to sleep, family time. I mean, all these things that get us away from the news. The news is like, it is like a drug, and it can be like a hit. I just know when I post on Facebook or something and I get X amount of likes,
Yeah.
it's a rush.
Of course,
You get a rush on
dopamine.
Twitter, and it's true. And I think, and so anyway, I think one of the ways to just feel better and be able to feel more like we're going to be okay is not living in that bubble for 24/7, giving yourself a break. People, there's like whole movements of people now just taking a device breaks, on the weekends. So getting off the phone, getting off the computer, going out in nature, taking a walk, playing basketball,
Yeah.
going to the gym, things that are healthy. And almost it's like in Al-Anon they say to detach with love. Detach. If you have a friend or relative who is an addict, it's, what, I can't control this person, but I can detach with love. I can give them to a higher power. I can detach with love. I can keep the focus on myself. What can I do for myself? So when I do my shows, when I make my film, when I'm doing my comedy, when I'm going to be doing these shows, I'm focusing on what I can do, using what skills I have as an entertainer, as somebody who tries to pay attention, and somebody who is hopeful, and somebody who is, I'm just, over this last 9 months, many mornings I would wake up completely despondent and completely like obsessed about the news. And I would read Abraham Lincoln, read Martin Luther King. I would read Martin Luther King's essays and the fear that he was going through when people were trying to blow up his house and did blow up his house, and death threats and just constant death threats. Every time he left the house for a period of years, there were people threatening to kill him. He kept believing in God. He kept believing in the mission he was on. He kept believing in, as it says, that famous phrase, the eyes on the prize. What is the big goal? And the big goal for us is a better country. And the big goal is a more perfect union. And that's the big goal. And there are obstacles. There were obstacles to Martin Luther King. There were obstacles to Abraham Lincoln. There were obstacles to anybody who Rosa Parks, anybody who strived for betterment, for a better society. There are obstacles.
I mean,
and
you're right.
I mean, that's the only way I can get through it. That's how I do get through it. And continue to just put one foot in front of the other and do the best we can.
Well, listen, it's working for you. You look fantastic these days. I don't know what it is about a COVID year, but it's doing you very well, Jimmy. But at the same time, I mean, and who doesn't want to go? Well, there's some people, it seems to me, who have become nihilistic. They don't even believe it's going to work anymore. They're out for themselves. They're stacking up their billions, and working Americans who, minimum wage in this country hasn't changed in how long? The federal wage is still like $7 an hour. People who are allowing that to go on and supporting a party that won't let that move, and who are supporting lies. I mean, I want that beautiful vision, but at the same time, we have felt closer to losing our democracy itself in these last months than maybe any time since the Civil War, Jimmy. I mean, my God, it's like we've been right on the cliff's edge, and maybe we still are.
Well, I think we are. I think we still are, Tom. But on the opposite side of that, the election process and the Electoral College and the election delivered a new president. Despite all of that, it delivered a new president. And it, hopefully, knock on wood, I'm knocking on my desk now, January 20th, it will deliver a new president. And what was remarkable to me, and this is just a source of inspiration, I'm a partisan, I'm a Democrat. That's how I grew up. That's how I've always voted. But I look at those Republicans, those Republican Secretary of States in Georgia and in Michigan, and those Republican legislatures who, and in Pennsylvania, many of whom voted for Trump and would have liked him, but did not. We're not persuaded by that man. And we're not persuaded by the threats and the con and the bullying that he tried to implement on those people. And I think that is a source, to me, was a source of inspiration and hope and reassurance about there's good people in this country, and they're making a difference, and they're adhering to principles rather than their own political own political biases about, yeah, they voted Republican. They would ideally like Trump in, but listen to the Secretary of State, I believe is in Georgia.
Yeah.
His name escapes me right now.
Yeah, Raffensperger.
Yes,
Trump's
and
still
he
going
stood
after
right
him
up.
today, saying his brother's linked up with China. He doesn't even have a brother. The president will not quit. But you're right; they've stood up.
But
It's
they
been a
stood
thin
up.
line
And there's,
sometimes, though.
yeah, but there's millions of people there. Look at the Black Lives Matter movement. Look at the people who have galvanized around the country to overcome, try to take a stand against institutional racism in this country, black and white. Martin Luther King did not die on April 4th, 1968. Obviously, his spirit and the spirit of the Judeo-Christian tradition that he was from, of that tradition, is alive and well in this country, and it's manifesting itself in the Democratic, well, not just the Democratic Party, but in people of goodwill and faith and belief that we are a better country than what the surface, than what Twitter would tell us, or what Facebook would tell us, or what the immediate thing on our plate would tell us right in the daily headlines. It's the bigger picture. Doesn't mean we stop working for change and just throw up our hands and say everything's going to be okay. Obviously, we have to continue to work. We have to do the hard work of legislation and on all of the hard work that goes into politics. That's why my hat is off to anybody who gets in the political arena, whether they're Democrat or Republican, because it's a lot of hard work. And I think most of the people who put their hat in the ring and step up to run for office in this country, most of them have the best interest of the country and their constituents in mind. And
God, I love you, Jimmy. God, I love you. But man, it looks scary out there a lot lately. A lot. Hey, you're an entertainer and you have been for a long time. You look at Trump clearly from what you're saying here from the beginning and saw there's an entertainer who's doing well in politics. Maybe I should do that too. What was it about Trump in the campaign and right through this presidency, do you think, that kept so many people with him, even when, and I heard you, he delivered on some things that are important to his base, but there's something about his attitude, his posture, the way he communicates that keeps people on board as an entertainer. How do you analyze? To me, he seems like an evil genius sometimes. But what is it? How does he turn the dial that makes it work?
I watched all his speeches on C-SPAN. I love C-SPAN. That's what I'm addicted to, C-SPAN.
But they're barely even speeches. They're free association. He goes from one thing to another, bada bing, bada boom. Right. They don't hold together at all. If you read them, you'd think this is a pile of crap.
And it is. And he's telling people what they want to hear. They want to hear that, for example, just look at the coronavirus. So he's been in denial about the virus all this time. All of a sudden, he gets it. There was like probably 50 times during his whole career that I said, he's done. You know, when he said the thing about the wall, Mexicans are rapists, drugs, he lost me like way back. He lost me when he was in New York and
they won.
Full-page ad in the New York Times about the Central Park Five. I was living in New York at that time. He lost me back then. But anyway, but there were several times where I said, when he said that, the thing about the NBC tape about you can grab women, that I thought, well, he's done there and he was done here and it never materialized. And then when he got the virus, I said, well, he's done now. People will clearly see that he's got the virus. And what's he do? He goes in, he gets all these drugs for a couple of days. He feels better. He's out in a limo, taking a tour around the neighborhood. Then he goes out and campaigns, and he campaigns he's filling stadiums around the country. And what is the psychological message? The message is, I'm okay. I beat the virus. You're going to beat the virus. It's not real. You got to go out there. And he's empowering people psychologically with the deception that the virus isn't real, that he's overcome it, that all of that's going on. And he's telling them, I'm strong. You're strong. We're strong. We're going to win. And that's
Herman Cain is dead.
And yeah. And I mean,
a whole lot of others, 350, whatever thousand now.
Yeah. 300,000 over. And so it's that type of thing. When you said evil genius, I don't know about the genius part, but there was an element of evil in terms of dishonesty. There's a dishonest element that is a through line through the whole campaign of the 4 years. And I think the majority of people, many people on both sides, most Democrats, many Republicans are tired of it. They're tired of it. They want to get back to some basic values where you can believe the president when the president says something, that where you can trust in the government, where you can trust in your elected officials to deliver, that they have the best interest of the country in mind. So I think that's psychologically where many, many people are, the majority of people in this country.
Boy, I want to believe right there with you, but I look at these opinion polls about what people say they believe, and there's a whole lot of people who are buying the lies and are building big, long political views around them. And I pray that we haven't become perpetually somehow now vulnerable to demagogues like Trump. But I fear we may have, and that others will line up behind him. Trump's, as many people have said, it's in a way his incompetence kept him from acting or achieving some of the stuff that he wanted, which would just have driven us right off the edge. But people kept buying the line anyway, and they're still buying it. A whole lot of them, Jimmy, the Republicans who are dissenting. How many is that? You know, what was it in the impeachment? Was it just Mitt Romney? You know, who, you know, it was such a tiny number who stood up and said no when the chips were down. And even now, we'll see what happens next week. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I just have faith in the common sense and decency of most people in the country that they don't want a bullshit artist. They don't, and that's kind of what he was. But he delivered on some of it and didn't deliver on others. But one thing is consistent: the dishonest factor is consistent. I saw today that he's going to Georgia and it's going to be a victory party. He's having a victory rally in Georgia.
His own victory, which is bullshit.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so, but you know, let's see what happens in Georgia. You know, he has. Yeah, there's the demagogue component of it, but there's also the motivating factor that goes into the other side. How many people on the other side are completely motivated, completely turned off, like the Lincoln Project, for example, like the Black Lives Matter, like the millions of African-American men and women in Georgia and all over this country, like the Native Americans in Arizona, like the Hispanic vote that we got here. I mean, you know, he got more than he did the first time, but the Democrats still got way more, and he turned off way more Hispanics than he turned on. So, I mean, I think there's the belief in our system, belief in the principles of it, and I think, in the words of civil rights movement, we shall overcome.
National defense. Let's look at your program. One-time candidate for Lieutenant Governor Jimmy Tingle. You got a lot of things on your list of elements of national defense that have nothing to do with guns. Take us through them.
Yeah, healthcare. Healthcare is a form of national defense. I mean, think about just what is national defense? It's protecting people. It's protecting the American people. Why can't we incorporate that mindset when it comes to our healthcare system? And it's basically taking care of people, especially around, again, the substance abuse issues, but using defense dollars and defense strategy to take care of people with a healthcare system that works for everybody.
What does that mean? Universal health care? Here's a question from James. Says Medicare for all or public option, Jimmy?
I would say ultimately Medicare for all or something like it.
Universal health care.
Yeah. But the stepping stone probably will be a public option, simply because it might be more attainable in the short run, where people can buy into it. But it depends what it looks like. It depends what it looks like. I don't know what Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders have been talking about, but I know that Bernie has been on board and is in the loop in terms of, according to Bernie, in terms of they're going to lower. I think they're going to lower the standard, the age for Medicare from 60, I don't know, 3 to 50 or 60, and then lower. I mean, that's one tactic that I heard Bernie talking about. But things like that, you know, where we're actually looking at protecting our own people in the country, the same way we look at national defense with 900 military bases around the world, protecting different sea routes and all this sort of stuff, trade routes and everything, protecting our own people in the country.
Drug treatment as national defense. And again, you're talking to somebody with firsthand understanding of this issue.
Yeah. So
from way back.
Yeah. I mean, when people need help, they can get help. It's pretty simple. We got to come up with a system, and we could develop it. I mean, 700 billion or something on national defense. why not use some of this money, or just broaden the definition of it and include drug treatment and alcoholism treatment as a form of national defense? Just both with the funding, but also with the strategy, coming up with more of a universal strategy around these issues. Like, one thing the virus has shown us, for example, advocating, getting the vaccine, that was all government money, right? Government money going into these private companies to develop these vaccines, right? That's national defense. Doing this type, having this type of mentality, this type of strategy around a whole host of things, so people are all over the country, regardless of their race, geography, income level, or insurance level, can get a hospitalization if and when they need it. Well, the same thing with alcohol and drug treatment, just making it a sense that we're protecting people. And when you take one person that gets sober, that doesn't have a job, or that is whatever is on public assistance, or maybe in a homeless shelter, or in car accidents, or incarcerated, and you take that one person who's a lot of tax dollars are going into sustaining this person, get this person and help this person, give them the opportunity to get help, to get treatment, to get sober, and they become a taxpayer rather than a tax liability on the society. That's a pretty good investment. That's a good investment in our own people, in our own society. And I would say the same thing about with education. Education is a form of national defense. Why should the property values of a child's home, of a parent's home, determine the quality of education for the child? What if you don't have property values? What if you don't have property? I mean, looking at our country as a country and not as 10,000 separate voting districts and 50 different states and whatever, thousands of different counties. Yes, it's all that, but it's also one country. That's why it was so frustrating when the virus hit, when the president said, we're in a war against the virus, and then he says, every state for themselves. What kind of a commander-in-chief says to the country, we're going to war? Every state for themselves. How are you getting New Jersey? How are you getting to Afghanistan? Montana, how are you getting to Afghanistan? Rhode Island, how are you getting to Afghanistan? We went as a unit. We go to the Olympics as a unit, as one country. We don't go as, Ohio and Nebraska and North Carolina. We go as the United States of America. And that was what was so appealing about Barack Obama, when he said, we're not red states, we're not blue states, we're the United States of America. That's what put people in Obama's camp. And that's what I think people want in the country. And even when Trump was saying, make America great, there was a unifying message in that, even though it's been divisive and it was a tactic at the time to unify the country. He never talked about unifying the country, really. But initially, he was talking about make America great. And I'm saying make America great by taking care of Americans.
I mean, but you can define that in so many different ways. For Trump, to a lot of years, that meant take America back to the 1950s. That meant, when you put it together with Mexicans are rapists and all the rest, that meant buttress and sustain white supremacy. You can take that in a lot of directions.
No, I agree, Tom, and I agree, and that was taken in the wrong directions. But I meant in terms of a unifying principle. We're saying with Barack Obama, we're not red states, we're not blue states, we're the United States. Make America great. It has a sense of unity in it. And in the highest sense of the word, in the terms, is what I'm referring to.
Could. I'm not sure that's what that crowbar was meant for, but it could. It could. You talked about Ronald Reagan. Now, he was also an entertainer, and he made it to the White House. Yeah. But his big message, which has had a lot of sway for a lot of years, including with Democrats, Bill Clinton and others, is, government, there's nothing great about government. Bill Clinton cut back on government. Cut back government. Government is not the answer. Has been kind of the reigning underlying mantra in Washington for a long time. And now we've got a country that's lost so much standing in the world, where so many people are in trouble, where so many people have turned to drugs because they're despairing. Do you think this country's ready for a turnaround on that? Could government be seen again as an effective tool for building this country up, for actually strengthening it? Are we done with capitalism will solve everything, Reagan theme that's driven so much for so long?
It's the only game in town, Tom, that is dedicated to helping the country. That's the mission of government. That's the mission. It's not the mission of private companies to provide health care for their workers. It's not the mission. The private company has a different mission, and and that's obvious now. You know, it's not the mission of you know, private industry or private companies to build a bridge, you know, to put a high-speed train from Boston to Springfield. It's not the mission.
Well,
right?
it could be. I mean, you know,
It could be.
the Trump administration and many Republicans before have wanted to put exactly that kind of project into private hands. Make the highways all toll roads, sell them off. I mean, the people are doing this.
Right, but it's not the mission of it, and it is the mission of government. I mean, look at Eisenhower after and this goes back to the war mentality or the war analogy. Eisenhower created the highway system, right, in the 50s. One of the reasons was they wanted to connect the country. So if we got attacked on the West Coast, we could get tanks from the East Coast to the West Coast. And if we got attacked from Canada or whatever, so there was a defense mentality to create the international highway system. But look what it's done for the country. So I'm saying that I think the pendulum has swung. Yes, government dollars, private know-how, private, you know, in terms of expertise, they can do a lot of things that government has not been able to do as quickly. For example, order a ticket. You want to order a ticket to my show? Just go to jimmytingle.com. You go to the Eventbrite ticket page. You can put it in, and in less than 15 minutes, 3 minutes, you'll have a ticket. Now that
25 bucks or pay what you can,
yeah,
it says when you get there.
But my point is, all of those innovations that came from private industry, we can adapt those for government, and government can obviously learn from the private sector, and the private sector can take the mission of government and create the correct balance that we need in the country to fix things. Because if a bridge is down, we can't expect Walmart to put the bridge up. You know, somebody's got to do it. It's got to be the U.S. government. And if that means you got to raise the gas tax that hasn't been raised since the 1990s, if it means you have to, you know, raise taxes in certain areas of the economy, then you have to do it. And I think it's a win-win for people in the long run.
Man, you got the positive gene going really hard here. You know, a lot of people have been pushing back against that. A lot of money's been put against that kind of perspective of pendulum swinging back toward effective government action. And of course, the Supreme Court has said money is free speech. And I've heard you talk about that one, say, come on, wait a minute.
Yeah, if money is a form of free speech, how much speech does the middle class have? And how much speech do the poor have? And how much speech do students with tens of thousands of dollars with student loans have? If money is a form of free speech, lack of money has got to be considered lack of speech. So I suggest next April 15th, when the federal government wants our tax dollars, we all write letters to Washington basically saying, listen, we'd love to pay you, but to be perfectly honest, we're speechless. That was a joke about money and politics.
Donald Trump says you want to save restaurants. They've now given a big tax deduction to business people. I guess the idea is that they'll go out and spend a lot of money in restaurants and help them survive the COVID downturn. This is going to go on for years, this deduction. You get like a huge deduction. So, you know, 6 martini lunch and the taxpayer kind of foots the bill.
Well, the restaurants are hurting. I'll say that.
They are.
So I don't know what the right answer for that is, Tom. Honestly, I know that we've had, you know, everything is, what is it, the saying, hindsight is 20/20 vision. You know, we could have done this in the beginning. We could have done that in the beginning. One of the things that they did in some of the European countries is they when they went into lockdown, instead of people applying for unemployment for a certain amount of money or giving people a certain amount, they gave, I always believe, 80% of their pay.
Yeah.
So people got 80% of their pay and stayed home. So they could pay their bills, they could pay their rent. That was one model that they used. I'm not sure every country that used it, but it was a model that was being used in Europe. I think Britain used it. I'm not positive. I think Germany used it.
Yeah,
but anyway,
the Dutch did a lot of that, and others.
Yeah, and it was just a more unified, you know, rollout of how to do this, and you know, so people are staying home, they're not losing money, and it's not you don't have the middleman in there of the, you know, the unemployment and all the paperwork that goes with that and the back and forth. And so I think in terms of restaurants and many businesses, I think initially, again, hindsight is 20/20, but imagine saying to the restaurant industry, you know what, Okay, the PPP loan did that to a certain extent for the workers, but not for the restaurants who have other expenses. So if there was something in place to help these folks, all businesses, not just restaurants, but all these businesses that helping these folks to stay in business, whether it's mortgage relief or landlord relief for renters, or or renters relief for their rent, putting things in place. And we know more now than we did 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But there's all of it involves government, because that's the only game in town. Who else is responsible for it? Who else is responsible for the state of Oklahoma putting a highway from one side of the state to the other side of the state? It's not going to be the businesses. It's got to be the government.
Why is this country so tough on its own people? When other countries, wealthy countries, we're the wealthiest for a while yet still. We'll see where China goes. But among all the wealthy countries, why are we so stingy? Why do we, I've even heard people say America is still kind of savage toward itself. We didn't give people a big percentage of their paycheck. My God, we gave people, a few bucks last year, and then and for a little while there was something for the unemployed, and then just a cliff, and it's just the way it is. What is it about our country that we treat each other, we treat our fellow citizens in that way? We're rich.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes, the founding of the country was built on, quote, individualism, right? And you got to build your own log cabin. Then you got to live in your own log cabin. Then you got to, that whole mentality. People farm the land. I mean, they settled the land. I mean, look at what happened to the Native Americans. There was, people killed people to get things. They enslaved people. I mean, it was a different mentality in this country. And at the same time, there was we were talking about freedom, and there was more freedom here than there was in Europe, for sure. And there wasn't a king, and there wasn't feudalism, and you could go up and down the economic ladder in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases. So there's just a lot of different themes in our country since the founding that are still present in the mentality of the country. I mean, I think it's competitive. There's a sense of you shouldn't get something for nothing, no free lunch, all that, that mentality. But a lot of the people who make those rules got a lot of free lunches.
Yeah, no kidding.
They got a lot of free lunches, and they go to good schools, and they get good health care. And the health care that President Trump got at Walter Reed was excellent health care. And he came in a helicopter and left on a helicopter. So there is sometimes it's do as I say and not as I do, I think, but there's a lot of that individualism, and you got to make it on your own. And anything else is, heaven forbid, socialism. That's the other thing, that we've been in this, intellectual war with the Cold War for so many years. Communism and socialism and communism, everybody's equal and everybody gets everything, which was not true. But the mentality, and in America, we're free. We're free to be poor. We're free to be rich. We're free to be,
we're free to be run over pretty soon if we don't get the basic health of our country together and the basic health of our economy together.
But again, Tom, that comes back to who's going to lead that. Is it going to be private enterprise? They've been talking about getting rid of regulations for years. They still want to deregulate everything. And we can see how deregulating everything isn't the answer. It's certainly not the answer to the housing crisis or the banking crisis. People with no money are buying houses. We're buying houses. And then the taxpayer was on the hook if they didn't pay. I mean, all of that was largely a result of deregulation. So the whole environment, it wasn't for the EPA, historically, the Charles River would not be where it is now. One of the cleanest rivers, and Boston Harbor, and all this came from government. When I say that government is the only game in town, it's the watchdog, and it's the only game that has the best interest of everybody theoretically in mind. And that's why it's hugely important. And people talked about the post office. They complain about the post office. The post office is never going to move to the Philippines for less wages. The post office, for 55 cents, a person comes to a box in your neighborhood, picks up your message, delivers anywhere in the United States of America. Tom, for 55 cents. What's the problem?
And it's just about been dismantled over the last few months to try and help Donald Trump win the election. I mean, look at all the pileups over Christmas. People now don't know if the letter's going to get there or not, if the box is going to get there or not. This attack on government has been real. It's been real.
Oh, it's been serious.
It's taken a big bite.
It's taken a big bite and it's proven to be wrong, because just look at the income gap, the inequality gap in the country. When they started that whole thing, look at the rhetoric from 1980 and Ronald Reagan saying government's not the answer, government's the problem. 1980. Look at the income gap in 1980 in terms of rich and poor, in terms of a whole host of things, and look at it now, getting government out of the way and deregulating everything. Just look at it. It's gone this way, and that's not by accident. It's almost by intent.
Jimmy, you done with politics, or you're going to dive back in? You're going to make another run at it? You went for lieutenant governor, it didn't quite work. You made a lot of votes.
Tom, after this conversation, if nominated, I will accept. If elected, I have no choice but to serve. You got me so fired up, man. I haven't talked this much so hard and so strong for so long. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Yeah, you got to watch out there. You got to watch out. Al Franken was in there, was in the U.S. Senate. And the next thing you know, there's a photograph and this and that, and he's out on his ear.
Yeah. I know. But I don't know, Tom, to answer your question seriously, I don't know if I would run again. I would never say no, and I'm not prepared to say yes, because it depends on the circumstances, depends what's available, and what I am uniquely qualified to do. But if they need somebody to defend the country, to uphold the principles, to speak with truth and honor and dignity, I could be your man.
What about comedy, Jimmy? You've been in the game a long time. I was watching when you went on Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show.
Yeah.
That is a long time back now. What have you seen happen in the world of comedy? Where's it gone?
Well, it's exploded. There's a lot more people doing it.
Yeah.
A lot of bright young comics coming up. It's like the next generation gets better and better. Like with anything, sports, the football players now are faster and stronger and bigger and better. The same with basketball, the same with hockey. It's one of those things that people improve. Waves, the next generation continually improves, and they're funny, if not funnier than our generation. Innovative, clever, different type of humor. And the other thing that's happened with comedy is there's more opportunities for comics because of the web. The web isn't all bad. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy things on it, but it's offered immense opportunities to millions of businesses, millions of people. Among them are comics, artists, musicians, bands. And again, getting back to national defense, the internet itself was initially a national defense priority back in,
Sure.
back
DARPA, MIT, and all that.
Yeah, and it came with the government money, and it came with a strategy. Again, it was for defense, but it has obviously great peacetime value. And that's just an unintended consequences of ingenuity, brains, and thinking in terms of protecting ourselves. And my whole point is we have to think in terms of protecting ourselves as national defense, and people, I think, can connect those dots, whether it's healthcare, drug treatment, highways, transportation, public education, you name it, Tom, we can do it. Veterans care, taking care of our veterans.
Question for you here, Jimmy. Who's your favorite young comic? Not the best, but your favorite, and why?
Oh boy, I don't have a particular favorite. Although there's a guy. I think he's only 17 now. His name's Sam Rossi. He's a friend of mine. He's a friend of mine's nephew that I grew up with in Cambridge. Robert Rossi, and it's his nephew. And he started doing comedy in high school, and he's really clever and really funny, and he did a great job at the Boston Comedy Festival. And so he's, I got to know him a little bit, but there's a lot of them. There's a bunch of, one of the things I do, and I've been doing it a long time, but before COVID, I was going into the comedy studio all the time doing sets. The comedy studio is a place mostly young comics coming up, and it was over in Somerville. It used to be in Harvard Square in Cambridge. And I'd do sets, and it was a blast just to work on new material, do old stuff, new stuff, and be in front of people in their 20s and 30s who could enjoy the point of view. And the audiences are really sharp, my experience, really sharp. They want more out of the comics. They just don't want, the culture has changed. The culture has changed. They're hungry for meaning. They're hungry for things that are looking forward, that they see that they see the disparities. They see the student loan debt. They see the racial disparities. They see the healthcare inequality. They see their peers with substance abuse. They see the wars. They see all this stuff, and they want better. So one of the most gratifying things for me is to work in front of these young audiences and do my show the way I do it. And when they like it, I like it. And it's a good win-win. And I get to see all these brilliant young comics coming up.
Audiences want more intimacy and more honesty, it seems to me, more transparency, you know. Shtick doesn't go very far these days, it seems to me, when I watch the really effective comics. I mean, you watch Dave Chappelle and these guys, they are so madly honest and transparent about the most intimate parts of their perspective and lives sometimes.
Yeah, I think, and that's fairly new. I mean, put it this way, we're more honest as a society.
Yeah.
People are more out there about their sexual orientation. They're more out there about their, whether it's recovery, demons, or personal stories, or, they're more out there about trauma. The people are more out there with their autobiographies. It's just a trend that's been happening for years, and it's reflected in comedy. And a lot of the comics are just, they get honest with themselves, and they realize that it resonates with people. And that was my experience when I first did the one-man show. I did it in theaters, and one of the first places I did was the Hasty Pudding Theater back in the 90s. And I would talk about recovery, I would talk about things back then. And it was the reason I worked in theaters is because you could be funny every 15, 20 seconds as a joke, but also you could have peaks and valleys in the show in terms of laughter. Everything didn't have to be a joke. You could talk about prejudice. You could talk about homophobia. You could talk about, alcoholism. You could talk about, military spending, and the audience embraced it. And it was a theater audience. So that trend in that one-person show format has allowed comics to just stretch out in terms of their comedy. So yes, we want to be funny. You can be funny, but you can also be serious or make a point, do something that resonates and touches the hearts and souls of the people who are listening to you.
Jimmy, how are you going to remember 2020? We're almost through it. New Year's Eve is coming straight up here. How are you going to look back on this year? So many dead, so many lives. Oh, here we go. Is this the old Lang Syne moment? Oh, you're going to go all Bob Dylan on us now.
It's been a tough year, Brother Tom. It's been a tough year. There have been some silver linings. Dr. Fauci.
Hey, hands in the air for Fauci.
We're all on Zoom. We got a vaccine.
Bring it to me. Here, my sleeve is up. My sleeve is up, Jimmy. Give it to me right here.
We have a new president. Happy New Year, brother.
Happy New Year, Jimmy Tingle. We'll take it. We'll take it. Top to bottom, front to back. Our own Bob Dylan right here saying it. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you very much. Listen, 5 more nights of Jimmy Tingle's Humor for Humanity, jimmytingle.com. And you can get links to all the ticket purchasing right there. And it's a great show.
By the power of private sector, you can order a ticket and have it in 5 minutes. That's the power of, but because of the intuition, innovation, and vision of the government, there is an internet to help make it happen.
Yeah, there is. Jimmy Tingle, whatever you got running through your veins, we're going to take it. We're going to take it here. It looks good and clean. You look great. You're in great shape, brother, and we appreciate your being here. Let's hope for a better 2021 for everybody.
Absolutely.
A whole lot better.
That's how I look at it, Tom. That's how I look at it, man. That's what gets me up in the morning. It's going to be better tomorrow than it was today. But Biden said the other day, it could get worse before it gets better. But ultimately, we're moving forward as a country and as a people. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
God love you, Jimmy Tingle. Happy New Year, my friend. good 2021. Thanks a lot for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you. Listeners, thanks for joining us. Always great to have your comments and your questions, just to know you're there. Now, let me see if I can bring this little guy down and say, Happy New Year. Here's to a better year in the year ahead. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Watch out for this next month. I see a lot potential for a whole lot of trouble out there, but let's hope we get by it. Let's get by it together as much as we can. Pull together and do the right thing as a country. Jimmy Tingle, you're the greatest. Thanks a lot for being here. Bye, everybody. Bye for now. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy New Year all.